Welcome back to another episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. On today's episode, we have Dr. Barbara Wueringer, who is in Cairns, Australia, starting her own organization because she wanted to remain independent, she wanted to remain in Cairns, and because there were so many Sawfish species that were there, and she got to study them, and that is her best type of shark. That's her shark. That's her thing. And we're going to talk about why Sawfish are her main shark that she studies, and we're going to talk about how she started her organization. Can't wait for you to hear this. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. I am your co-host, Andrew Lewin, here with my co-host, Dr. David Ebert. Dave, I'm going to just tease this a little bit. Are you ready to go to Cairns, Australia, do a pub crawl, and talk about Sawfish?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. We can relive our youth, Andrew. And,
there we go.
And join up with Barbara and her crew, and hopefully we'll get a discount on that too, and just hit all the pubs we can and promote Sawfish and
absolutely
all the pubs we can. So I think she let it slip the how many were out there, so we have to get in shape for that one. I think so. Barbara's another one of these just entrepreneur types. We've had Rachel Graham on, and several others that have just they pursued their passion and started their own business, a nonprofit or private business, as well as or a nonprofit, just because they wanted to pursue what they're doing. Yeah. And I think that's fabulous. I love having people on like that because they're people that have really blazed their own path in the field, and they've had to learn skills and things they never thought they would when they were getting their PhD or MSc, right. But they've had to really sort of blaze their own trail, and I just really enjoy having people on like that, just because it's such an outside the box experience for them, and I think people will really enjoy this episode today with Barbara.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're going to learn what it's like to be MacGyver and who MacGyver is for some of them who don't know who MacGyver is. But how to learn how to survive and do studies in remote areas. I think that's a really important component to a lot of times when we study sharks or we do anything in the marine field. You are in a remote area. If you're on a boat, there's nothing around, and that could be remote. That could be considered remote. In this case, you're in a number of different river systems on Aboriginal land, or in another remote area, and there's no access to internet, there's no access to satellites, there's you're living off the solar power, there's no toilet facilities. It could be a little rough for a lot of us, and so you really learn how to survive in those areas, and not only survive but do your studies to learn more about sharks and rays. So I think it's going to be a really interesting episode. So let's get to the interview with Dr. Barbara Wueringer. Looking forward to hearing it, and we will talk to you after. Hey Barbara, welcome to the Beyond Jaws podcast. Are you ready to talk about sharks?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Well, welcome to the Beyond Jaws podcast, where we have Dr. Barbara Wueringer, an outstanding researcher and entrepreneur who's the founder and director of Sharks and Rays Australia, an NGO. She's also an honorary research fellow at Macquarie University and a research member of the Queensland's Government Culva Carpentaria Inshore Fishery Working Group, which that's a mouthful, but sounds really impressive. She's also originally, though, Barbara's from Austria, but she relocated to Australia about 20 years ago to pursue her passion working on sharks and rays. That change in continents led to her becoming fascinated, particularly with freshwater elasmobranchs in northern Queensland, which includes sawfish, which I'm sure we're going to hear plenty of today because it's her specialty, but also river sharks and freshwater stingrays. Barbara has over 30 peer-reviewed publications, numerous research grants, and she's co-supervised at least 9 graduate students. And she's also makes frequent appearances at professional conferences. And when starting up a business, it's one of those things you have to develop a lot of skills, particularly administrative skills and media skills that they don't teach you in biology. So we're interested to hear about how she developed some of those skills today as well. She's developed an organization whose mission is to conduct research on sharks and rays in Australia and to educate the public about these fascinating animals, as well as involve them in their work. As I mentioned, she's a founder and director of the Sharks and Rays Australia. She did her bachelor's and her master's degree at the University of Vienna in her home country of Austria, and then she migrated to Australia to the University of Queensland, where she did her PhD. And Barbara, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. When you read all my accomplishments off, it sounds like a lot. I'm like, I don't think about this very often.
Well, you are. You're very accomplished. I just barely scratched the surface. So anyway, welcome to the show, and we'll start off with our sort of our first question we typically ask our guests is, how did you get interested in marine science and the sharks and rays, and especially being from Austria?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't a straightforward path. So I actually, when I finished high school, I went traveling in Australia for 6 months, right? And I'd grown up with a family, and my parents took us traveling all the time. And so this was a really important part of my life. I learned to dive when I was 14. And then I came back and I had absolutely no idea what to do. And so I studied architecture for a year. And I quickly realized that I actually wasn't interested in, designing buildings or something like that, because if somebody gave me a big piece of land, I would like to grow a forest rather than, cut it down and put buildings in. And so, one night I was in a bar, I ran into a friend of mine, and she had been studying medicine, and then she started talking about how she swapped to biology, and she spent half an hour talking about the breathing of snails, out of all things.
Interesting.
And I was like, I think this is what I want to do. I want to study biology. My parents hated me, but they came around fairly quickly, because we then traveled to Egypt together and went diving, and they just, I told them everything that I knew about coral reefs, and they just absolutely loved it. So, yeah, this is how it just all went from there.
I have to admit, I think this is the first time, Dave, we've heard of somebody choosing their path at a bar once they heard about breathing of snails, and that's what they chose. I love it. I love that aspect.
Yeah.
That's such an Australian thing to do.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. The conversations with my parents, they absolutely weren't easy. But for me, I just realized that I really wanted to do that. And I remember, for example, sitting in an architecture class, and they were talking about how there is skyscrapers being built with ventilation systems or cooling systems that were based on the termite mounds, right? And so how there's structures being taken out of nature and then turned into developments and things. And I was like, This is actually really interesting. And so I realized, for me, that biological aspect is actually really where I want to work and where I want to be.
What were the concerns that your parents had when you said, I would like to pursue a marine biology degree?
I don't think it's a profession that is known to make people a lot of money.
Right.
And especially being in a landlocked country. I think my parents were also probably concerned about me moving away, which, yes, I did end up doing. And my brother lives in Thailand, so our family is now all over the world.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, I mean, they probably had all the concerns that good parents have. Yeah. But when you got to follow your passion.
And what do what do your parents say now? Based on your career now as it is?
I think they're proud. They're proud of it, and they're interested in it. They find it. Yeah, I think we have a lot of good conversations about it.
Nice.
So, where did you I know you spent some time in Bimini. Was that how'd that all come about?
Yeah. So when I was studying biology, so the system in Austria was different. So we had the first diploma and then the second diploma, but you had to finish the second diploma to get a master's. And so the first diploma is kind of the equivalent of a bachelor's, but it wasn't an independent degree. Okay. And so that one was biology. And then for my master's, I wasn't quite sure what to specialize on. So it was either coral reefs or sharks. So that was my two big interests. And so what I did is I joined a field trip to Jordan, the Red Sea, where we did work on coral reefs and worked on transects and things like that, and it was really cool. And that same summer I also went to Bimini, and as soon as I handled my first lemon shark, and I mean they're tiny, but I was pretty scared. I knew that this was what I wanted to do, and so this is really how it came about to then work with sharks. And I think I've learned so much in that short time that I spent in Bimini that I implement now. It's phenomenal what Dr. Gruber set up there. So
yeah. And how was it? 'Cause we had a lot of people came through Bimini. How was it working with Doc Gruber?
So I spent a month there in was it 2001 or 2002, and then I went back for PIT for a month in 2006, I think, after my master's, 2005. And I really enjoyed it. Like, I think we were all crazy. I was there with Al Harry, who is now Fisheries WA. I was there with Tristan Guttridge, who now runs, Save the Blue.
Yep.
Charlie Huveniers, who is now at Flinders University doing white shark research and all kinds of things. So, it was a lot of fun people and a great team. And just, I think, really nice to be surrounded by so many people who went off and did careers in things that they really loved. And,
So after you spent some time there, though, then what was sort of your next? Now, this was you went there initially for part of your master's thesis research, and then
so I went there just to figure out if I wanted to work with sharks, and I remember, I went back a second time after my master's. So there's a lot of stuff in between. So I went to Bimini. Then I came back, decided that I wanted to work with sharks and fish. So I then, did a lot of lectures and coursework in Vienna on that. Anything I could get my hands on. And there wasn't anything on sharks, but for example, one of my professors, he knew that I was interested in that. So he had a dogfish in the freezer and I just grabbed it and dissected it and learned things. And I was just really keen to learn more about it. And I remember there was one course where we had to give a presentation on a paper. So we had to learn how to present things. And I went into the library, and back then, we had floppy disks and couldn't access too many things online. Or and I remember walking in there, and there was a print edition of a journal, and there was a paper in there by Steve Kajura. And I read that paper and gave my presentation on that. And then I signed up for an exchange semester to Australia. Went to Brisbane and realized that there was a lab there that worked on electroreception in sharks and rays. And so I did an internship with them. And after that, did a year of research in Australia that was then granted towards my master's thesis in Austria. So this was really good because I got to spend a year in Australia doing research on shovelnose rays, and I didn't have to pay tuition fees, which is a big thing. Like,
that's huge.
I got through all my education including my PhD without paying tuition fees.
Wow.
Which is massive, and I'm really thankful for that. And so that's how I fell into electroreception, and then I ended up doing my PhD and having Steve Kajura as my third supervisor in the US and working on Sawfish. And so after my master's, I went back to Bimini. And then after Bimini, a week later, there was the AES conference in Tampa, which was my first conference. And that was absolutely fantastic.
It's a good first conference to have. Yeah.
Oh, it was amazing. I remember partying with all the Bimini crew, right? So we had a lot of fun. But then also, and this was really, really special. Like it was special, but it was also funny. Like, I'm different now, but obviously there was a lot of drinking involved. And I remember I had to do my poster. And I remember waking up in the morning and I was like, oh my God, I'm still hungover. I don't know how to do this poster presentation, and, totally terrified of, there's so many names there of people that I saw on TV and so many big shark biologist names and stuff. And then I'm standing at the poster and I'm like, okay, I can do this. And this lady comes up to me, and a young man is pushing her. She's sitting in her wheelchair, and she's like, oh, this is so good. You worked on shovelnose rays. I've worked on shovelnose rays in PNG. Tell me more about it. And so I told her about it, and it was Eugene Clark.
Wow.
And it was just phenomenal because for me, I was so welcomed into this society, and also just realizing like everybody's just there because we're passionate about the animals that we work with, and we just really want to talk about it. And so, I still
Just even to think of presenting in front of Eugene Clark is intimidating, just of her stature and like as a young student and having to be. But the fact that she was so interested in it, she wanted to know the results. I think that just goes to show. Dave, you're the same when talking to you. It's like you're genuinely interested in the subject matter that people are presenting, not the fact of judging the people that you're that are presenting, and you want to know more about it. And I think that speaks a lot to the people that are in the shark science field, to be like, I really want to know what you're up to. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I could just add on, I know. Well, I met Jeannie when I was a grad student myself, just finishing my master's, and then later, years later, I had my own students, and she was always the same way. How you described Barbara, she was always the same way. She'd come up, very much, unless you knew who she was or something, you just start talking to her, and she just had a genuine interest in what you were doing. And I know with a couple of my students, she actually corresponded with them. She was so interested in the stuff. And one of them was I had to do with swell sharks, which was a species that Jeannie had worked on. And so she'd actually followed up after a conference, which my student, you imagine a master's student like you were, just
awesome.
Can't believe that Jeannie Clark followed up with them. So it's a good. Those are good stories because that was the kind of person she was, and I think younger people didn't have a chance to meet her. That was just always nice to share those kind of stories with her and stuff. So
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that was good. Did you have any more interactions with her after that, or did you get to have an opportunity to talk with her anymore? Or?
Oh, I don't think so. I think no, I don't think so. Because I went to Australia fairly quickly. Like I then spent, I think, a year after that getting married, moving to South America, bringing my husband back to Australia with me when I started my PhD. So pretty interesting. And then
it's a pretty big event in life.
Yeah. But then coming back to Australia, or moving to Australia, it's like then, for me suddenly, like AES was still something. I wanted to go to this conference, but, it's not attainable to go there every year. So I try every other year, but now it's more Sharks International and the years just passed too quickly, but
You traveled quite a bit, for doing a lot of different things, going to Bimini, going to Australia, starting off in Austria. It takes a lot of guts and a lot of adaptation, to different cultures and living in different places. How did that shape you, like, to who you are today, like in your career? Like that's gotta play a pretty important role, right?
Yeah, so it takes guts, but it also doesn't. I think my parents, this is something that I really, really appreciate. Like my mom, my grandparents used to go hunting in Africa, right? And this is something that I also find quite interesting because my grandparents passed away a few years ago, but if they were alive nowadays, they would be the biggest conservationists, right? But back in the day, in order to show you appreciation of nature, that's what you do. You would go hunting if you had the opportunity. And so this is something that also really has helped me in the work that I do nowadays. We work with Sawfish, and I come across a lot of trophies, and I really try not to judge the past, because that's what people did before. They would kill the animals and take the trophies. Before we understood what the impact was. But so for me, traveling was always there. It was in my blood, right? And so it wasn't as much of a challenge as it would be for people who have never traveled before. But it gave me a really big appreciation of different cultures and realizing what different cultures bring to the table, their importance. And so I work very closely with a lot of indigenous land and sea ranger groups and their traditional owners. But the other thing as well is my parents traveled really rough. So we went to all these countries, but we did it cheap because there wasn't that much money around. Yeah. And so there was a lot of adventures. And so, I spend 4 months a year now camping in remote areas where there is no facilities, and take volunteers out in these areas. There is saltwater crocodiles, and I take volunteers out in these areas, and we do research there. And I think that's something that I've learned through growing up with my parents. Like you were saying, Dave, before, there's a lot of skills that I've learned as an entrepreneur. Well, I didn't realize that I would, as the principal scientist at Sharks and Rays Australia, that I would have to know how to change a trailer wheel bearing in the middle of nowhere.
Yes. Yes.
So it's where we are is extremely remote. There is
100%.
You gotta make things happen. So
you get to be very resourceful when you're living that lifestyle. I'll bet.
Yeah, and I think that's also something that I really loved about Bimini. How Doc was like, he was trying to not waste things. He was always trying to reuse things, and with that it gave him the ability with Bimini to do things in a way where he probably didn't need as much funding because he wasn't maybe not able to attain that funding. And that was a big thing for me as well with Sharks and Rays Australia. Like we didn't have that much funding. We had funding from Save Our Seas Foundation, but there was a lot of things where I was like, well, if we break that piece of equipment, then it's going to take us a while to figure out how to get that again. So it's you gotta get really resourceful with what you have.
Yes. Are you guys? Are you based? Where are you actually based at? Where are you actually based at? Your organization's headquarters.
So I'm based in Cairns, so far north Queensland. It's where the rainforest meets the reef. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's also the last big town before you hit Cape York. And at some point we looked it up. We were like, how remote is remote, right? So Cape York has the area that it covers, the geographic areas, is 2/3 the size of Germany. Right?
Oh, wow.
Germany has 72 million people, right? Cape York is inhabited by 48,000 people.
Yeah, wow.
And the majority of them are indigenous. So when I say remote, it's really remote. And it's it's pretty special to be able to work in a place like that.
I bet. I bet.
Is it when you go out, when you're in the field up there, you have to like really plan out accordingly to pretty much bring what you're going to need up there, because if you as you say, if you have a breakdown or something, you're not likely to be able to pick it up at a store nearby.
So I accept interns and also field assistants, and so the field assistants quite often it's a bit like Bimini. They're students. They want to get experience in doing shark research, and so they have to pay a financial contribution to join, so that we can make this happen as well. And quite often they help packing things at the beginning. So they learn how to do Tetris. How do you fit all that stuff, all that research gear that you need? How do you fit that into a car and in a boat, and how do you make it safe and things like that? It took a while to figure out what are the things that we need and what are the things that we don't need, because we don't also want to have too much stuff. So you really gotta make sure you've got everything, but not any extra weight.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I guess if you get an intern that has some mechanical skills, that probably moves to the top of your list of people to include in the trip.
Absolutely. A lot of students approach me and they're like, oh, what are the skills that you need? Like, I'm really interested in GIS and stuff like that. And I'm always like, I need MacGyvers. I need MacGyvers. I need people who can make things happen when we're out there.
Yeah. Well, how would you we have a lot of people who are just starting out in their career. Some of their students. Where would you say that they should get that experience of like trying to figure out how to be that MacGyver? Some of them don't even know who MacGyver is. Let's be honest, right? But but like, how do you become that?
We're aging ourselves, people.
Yeah, I know. But how as like a student or like a graduate student or even some like an earlier career scientist, how do you get that experience of just kind of putting things together?
I think it's about exposing yourself to things. And I think, my parents were really upset, for example, when I said I want to go traveling during my studies, because they were like, you need to have that straight career path. You can't have any gaps. And I don't know if that's different now, but for me, if I look at CVs, I think those career gaps are actually quite important, because those are the things where you go out, you learn things about cultures and places, and you put yourself in situations that you wouldn't experience in your work environment, but you also learn about yourself. One of the things when I moved to Australia was I realized that I couldn't leave myself behind. Like I bring things to the table that might be positive and might be negative, but some of it is part of my culture, and that might not be so understood here.
Right.
But so I had to learn about myself as well, and figure out what these things are and stuff like that. So, but I think, I think a lot of people won't have to learn the MacGyver skills the way that we do. But yeah, I think it's like if you're in a lab, you're always going to be welcomed if you're good at statistics. If you do field trips, you're always going to be welcomed if you know how to fix a boat engine or something like that.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
if that's stuff that you like doing, go for it. Do it, learn it, expand on that knowledge. So
Yeah. One of the biggest things that I ever had to learn was how to fix instrumentation, like on a small boat in the middle of the ocean, when nobody else, you don't have engineers around to help you. You have to kind of tinker with it and read up on electronic engineering so that you could figure out, how these things work and how you could fix them. And hopefully you can, because if not, your entire trip is gone to waste if you can't get that piece of data, right? And so sometimes you put yourself in those pressured situations, and other times you just got to how do I figure this out? I think that's really important.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that's where you really learned a lot about yourself, that's for sure. I say I'm really aging myself, but I was kind of fortunate because when I was doing a lot of the field work of my grad studies, we didn't have any equipment. We had a compass and a map, pretty much was it. As long as you didn't lose the map and you didn't have the foggy weather, you could do the compass. The other instruments just were not. It was kind of pre-instrument time, so it had good and bad with that. But you can always use somebody who could work on a car or a truck or whatever. That was something that was definitely a bit handy to do back in the day, because there's nobody coming to help you usually in a lot of those places. So Barb, how is it because obviously your German's your first language. How was it moving to when you went to? I guess you're pretty well traveled, so you spoke some English before. But how is that going to a different country and having to adopt a new language?
I think you've been to Darwin recently, hey? And the Northern Territory.
Yep.
One of the things that I realized in Australia is the further up you go, the stronger the slang gets and the harder people are to understand. So I think at the beginning in Far North Queensland, I did have some trouble. And I think a lot of people were finding that quite enjoyable. But it also, I think, one of my first field trips, the guys were like, okay, we got to teach that chick some words. We got to teach her, she's vegetarian. and Aussies, they chop all the words off, an ambo is an ambulance driver and
right.
a sparky is a electrician and things like that. So you really got to find your way around in that language. But I love it. I think it's a beautiful language, beautiful slang dialect.
It's interesting. You talk about having that certain sort of slang in a particular area. When I went to South Africa, I was in what's called the Eastern Cape, and they have their own sort of dialect in that area, which is kind of a combination of Afrikaans and English. And it was the worst place you could have gone in South Africa to try to converse in English, because you had to kind of know both languages, and it was just a very harsh language. And then people are talking about tackies and bakkies, and I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Tackies are tennis shoes and bakkies are trucks. I had no freaking idea.
Oh, wow.
Going like, huh? What?
Yeah, so it takes a little bit to get used to, for sure.
Yeah, but, so I landed kind of like you, Barbara. I went to the one place where they got a really strong slang and have their own sort of dialect there. So you think they're doing English. So it's just
but I think it's also for me, a lot of the indigenous people that I work with, for them English, for some of them English is like their sixth language, right? So so they speak their languages, and because there's a lot of connectivity between the different groups on the Cape, so they all speak a lot of different languages, and so it's a really important thing as well.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. You obviously work. Have you picked up any of the indigenous language at all yourself?
No, I haven't. Actually.
Yeah.
And
it's probably a difficult language, though, right? Because it's probably not based in anything that we've known, Germanic or like the Spanish related, and Spanish, French, and Portuguese and stuff, right?
Yeah, it's very different. Yeah. And there's so many languages.
It's a similar thing in Africa, where the Xhosa language, there's a lot of clicks and whistles to it, and it's just like, what? I have no way I can pick that up. So you hadn't shared. How did you first really get the sawfish? Was really kind of you decided that was going to be your species of choice?
Yeah, so I did my master's. I'm shaking my head because I think that Sawfish kind of picked me in some weird way, but yeah, it's
Love
but
it.
I was working with shovel-nosed rays for my master's, and then I wanted to stay in Australia, and I wanted to do a PhD, and I wanted to find something that hadn't been worked on, right, and do something that was new. And I came across Sawfish somehow and realized that nobody had looked at how to use their saw and how, or their sensory biology or anything like that. And so I got really interested in that. And I then flew to Cairns to meet with Lyle, who is the owner of Cairns Marine. It's an aquarium fish collecting company. And back then they were allowed to collect sawfish from the wild and ship them to public aquaria around the world. And so I think most of the sawfish that you see in captivity around the world now are from Cairns Marine. And so we had a chat, and I set up a project basically then to work with them and use that time between the animals being coming in from the wild and being sent to the aquarium, to use that time to do experiments with them. And I think I do remember that Steve Kajura at some point was in Cairns as well, and I showed him the tanks at Cairns Marine, and I was like, I felt like I had to peel him off the window again, because he was just like, oh my God, there's sawfish in there. So, they're just fascinating animals. So yeah.
Yeah. So in a way, they, as you said, they sort of picked you to do a thing. So once you kind of got onto the sawfish thing, what was sort of your next? How'd you?
Yes.
So is that? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I did my PhD with them, and that was my first introduction into field work in Cape York as well, and saltwater crocodiles. So I had learned gill netting in Bimini, and I had learned how to handle sharks and rays. But then going up there with Cairns Marine, like we would catch sawfish in the wild and also spear-tooth sharks. We brought the first spear-tooth sharks back into captivity, and yeah, so we had trucks with, I think it was 12,000 litre tanks at the back of it, and in the middle of nowhere had to put these animals into those tanks and then bring them back to Cairns, make sure they don't just survive, but really everything goes well for them as well. And these river systems, there was something about Cape York that just totally fascinated me about it. And it's, it's not the crystal clear waters and the palm trees and the blue lagoons. Like, now it is murky, the waters are full of jellyfish, there is sand flies, you've got mangroves, you've got saltwater crocodiles. Sometimes the water is so murky you can't even see the propeller on your boat. So yeah, and it gets hot. Like, it was really tough work, but for me somehow it was like, I was like, this is where I want to be. I got stuck on it. I just absolutely loved it. It was just, this is such a great place. And I think also because it's so untouched and remote. It's just really special. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine.
When you were up there doing the sawfish, was that when you started running into some of these river sharks, glyphus up there?
Yeah, so we did one trip with Cairns Marine where we brought some spear-tooth sharks back, and they were in Melbourne Aquarium. And I also did experiments with them in captivity for their electroreceptive abilities. There's a lot of stuff from my PhD that I still need to publish. Every time I run into my PhD supervisor at a conference, he's like, how's that paper going? I'm like, it's on the list.
Like, it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, I do try to get some of the old papers out because I think they are really, really important. But yeah, it's busy times always. And then also that was the first time I came across freshwater whip rays, and they're also a really fascinating species. They're
Oh wow. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So have you done much on the whip rays at all, or just?
Yeah. So we so we're talking about Urogymnus daliensis. So they're the Australian freshwater whip ray, and they got separated from the Asian giant whip ray, that huge one that grows to 2 meters disc width. They got separated as a species in 2008. And we've got a paper that I'm working on at the moment, and it is expanding, the range, but it's also in collaboration or in partnership with the traditional owners that I work with, and so it's a range expansion, but we're then also showing that these animals are found in rock art on the East Coast, and so that also shows that this range extension is not, it's probably not a recent occurrence, because some of the rock art is about 11,000 years old. So it's really cool stuff, where I find it just brings everything together that we do. And they're a fascinating species, and they're also beautiful to work with. So when you got volunteers and interns out, and they learn how to handle sharks and rays, the whip rays are always good fun for everybody.
Yeah.
They're the favorite pancake.
Yeah, I can see that favorite pancake.
So you've been up there. So you're focused on the. I guess what species are you getting up there of sawfish now?
So we got all 4 Australian species in our data set, and we've got one location in Queensland as well, where you can catch all 4 species of sawfish in the same bay.
Wow.
So it's pretty special. Yep.
Yeah.
Having said that, in Queensland, we don't see as many sawfish as I would like to. So I think that also keeps me on my toes and makes it pretty special when we catch a sawfish. So yeah, there's a lot of conservation work that I have to do as well.
So this obviously, you get 4 of these sawfish, which gets pretty large, and they all co-occur. From an ecological standpoint, that's just kind of fascinating to me. Do you have any explanation of that at all?
It's something that we're looking into. So I collaborate with Ross Dwyer from University of the Sunshine Coast, and he's an animal tracking expert. So there's an animal tracking aspect to this study, obviously, and but it's. I think we started this work in Mapoon back in 2017. So there's a lot of effort that goes into catching these animals, and then downloading those receivers in remote areas, and so I think that paper is going to highlight some of those. Yeah, why are these animals co-occurring, but also what are the differences of habitat that they require within that bay. You can really look at that niche partitioning. So it's really exciting stuff, but we're not fully there yet. So I have ideas about it, but
Yeah, it's just fascinating. You got these 4 large rays, basically, just kind of do, which morphologically look like they do the same thing, and yet they're all sort of there. It's just kind of interesting.
But they don't,
question.
and so this is what I loved about sensory biology as well when I did my PhD. That somebody puts a shark in front of you, a dead shark, and you just look at the sensory systems, and based on that, it gives you an idea of probably what the habitat requirements of that species are, but then also where would it occur? Is it or how would it catch its food? Stuff like that. So I find it super interesting.
It's a bit of a predictor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so with sawfish as well, you can see that the size of the eyes across the species gives an indication of the murkiness of the habitat, things like that.
So have you created models on what of the different systems compared to the different species, of the likelihood of where you would be able to find some of these sharks? Or can you do that based on the like taking one of the species and looking at like you said, size of the eye, and looking at general murkiness of a water? These would be the general areas that we may or may not be able to find those sharks.
Yeah, so I think that research has been done. It's kind of like the stuff that Kara Jopak did, where she looked at brain, sensory brain areas and things like that. For me, I got stuck on sawfish, right? We work up any shark array that we have in our gear that we catch, and we do collect data on them. But I got stuck on sawfish, so I wasn't really doing the large comparisons across a lot of different species.
Right.
But within sawfish, I do understand which habitats. You find this species more rather than that species. There is a mangrove association, whereas the other species is more found over sandy beaches.
Right.
And then freshwater sawfish. If you go upstream into pure freshwater areas, that's where you're going to find freshwater
Yeah.
sawfish, freshwater whip rays, and bull sharks. So,
And can, like, from a conservation standpoint and maybe like a reintroduction standpoint, can you, these are obviously endangered species. Are they, can you, if you do put a program together to reintroduce or put sawfish in areas where they might do better based on their sensory organs, can you do that, or is that possible to like put them in a new system that would be good for them based on the sensory?
I mean, you could, but I think one of the big problems with sawfish is that they need to reach about 3 meters total length to become sexually mature.
Oh, okay.
And that corresponds to about 8 to 10 years. So I think the only place in the world where captive breeding has been successful so far is Atlantis in the Bahamas.
Right.
And that's the 5th species of sawfish. So with the other 4, it hasn't been possible.
Yeah.
And I think that's a tricky one because it just takes such a long time, and
For
so
sure.
it's yeah.
Do you do part of your? I would say part of your stuff. You're doing. You have a citizen science program where you're in the community looking at, I guess, going to bars among other places, looking at the roster and the saws that are in these various drinking establishments. Has it been very fruitful?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the citizen science component of our work. So, and this is a language story, right? When I did my PhD, and I moved to Cairns in far north Queensland fairly quickly because I realized that I had to spend more time here doing those experiments in the tanks with the animals. And so, I would go to a bar and people would be like, "Oh, so what do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing a PhD." And they're like, "Oh, so you work with dolphins?" "No, I work with sawfish." And they're like, "Oh, starfish. I love starfish." And I wrote a blog post about this on the homepage, and I'm like, I was in the global stronghold for 4 out of 5 species, and people think I'm talking about starfish, and I was like, I am done with this. They need to know what a sawfish is. And so I was really like, I need to, I did a media training, and I was like, I really need people to understand what a sawfish is. And then when I ran the first field trip for Sharks and Rays Australia, which was complete chaos, it was the first time, I brought some friends, and I remember we were launching the boat in Normanton in the Norman River, and there's massive crocodiles, and we put all our fieldwork gear in, and we're basically sitting on top of all these gill nets and drum lines. We were like, how are we going to make this work? Things like that. And then really had to figure out that system. There was a lot of swearing. We set a gill net at some point, and there was jellyfish in that net, and I had never had to deal with jellyfish and gill nets before. So we tried our best, but I actually got a jellyfish tentacle into my eye, which is extremely painful. So I was basically like, I am done here, right? I can't do this. This is too much. This has been so much. It's been so hectic, with crocodiles and things. And then one of the guys on board looks at me and goes, you know that we're going to have a sawfish in the net now. And I was like, I don't care. I just want to go home. This is blah, blah, blah. And there was a little freshwater sawfish, right? To date, the only one that we caught in the Norman River. And if you look at the pictures and the story now, it's like, I don't look as happy as I should be.
It was a tough day that day.
It was a tough day. But then also, we went back to the campground, and, people see our boat, and the boat says research on the side, and so everybody's really excited and goes, what do you guys do? And so I started talking about sawfish, and one of the recreational fishermen who was camped there as well, he showed me a video, and it was a video of a sawless sawfish that he had caught a few days before. And the animal was alive, so somebody had amputated the saw, and he gave me that video, right? And so for me, that was the birth of the idea of the citizen science campaign, because it showed me that we need to inform people that it's not okay to cut the saw off. We need to have that information flow into the community, but at the same time, people are interacting with these animals. And that's really valuable information for us because, it tells us where the animals are found within those systems. It can show us hotspots and things like that. Mm-hmm. And that's how all this started. And then at some point, as part of the citizen science campaign, we started receiving saws. And so, we now have, I think, 700 sawfish saws
Wow.
There's a big one
wow.
behind me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've published a paper on that as well, on the saws, and it was like this idea of like, you go into a pub in far north Queensland, and there is saws over the bar. They're a thing.
Right.
They're
They're
part
just
of the
there.
local culture.
Right.
And so I was like, well,
Yeah.
if we can get the people at the pub to talk about sawfish, then I think we have a chance to win this conservation battle.
Right.
So let me get this straight now. So like your career initially began in a bar, and now you go around to bars talking to people about the sawfish over the bar. What a great job. Man, I'd like to sign up for that one.
You figured it out.
I don't drink much anymore, but
No.
Australia bars are important.
But you figured it out. You've gotten the best of both worlds, right?
It was going to have to go one of two ways. Either you're going to have to stop drinking, or it could go really horribly badly.
We have an expression in
in a-
Australia that politicians use, which is to pass the pub test.
Oh,
Have you guys
okay.
heard
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Have
No,
you
we
guys
haven't
heard
heard, but I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to win
So
them
it's a
over
bit-
at the pub, right?
Yep. If your politics are good, you pass the pub test.
I like it.
I say,
Now,
wait,
with this-
it's not like you've been
with-
in. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's like in college or whatever, they have the pub crawls. You're doing your sawfish
Yeah.
crawl, or your sawfish swim from one pub to the next.
Love it.
Yeah,
love
so I mean, actually, we do that in some way. Like my PhD student Nikki, so she designed all these display cases, and each one of those display cases, it features sawfish saws. If a pub already has saws, then they get like a board of information around sawfish, and some of the information is then specific to the saws that they have. And so she created every single one of those cases individually, and they're different. And, if we have local historic images of a sawfish from that area, we'll put that image in there. If the local traditional owners gave us the language word for sawfish for that area, then that's in there. And so people could do a pub crawl in far north Queensland and find all the display cases. Like, I would definitely encourage that.
That'd be amazing. That'd be so cool.
You know what you do? This would be a good idea for a sponsorship. You get all the pubs that have the sawfish there with your information, and you set up like a pub crawl thing. And so that everyone you can send to these different pubs, the pub will donate so much to your sawfish research. You'll bring them
that's
business, and you can get some fun out of it. That'd be great,
I think
especially Australia.
this is a great idea. Yeah, I think this is a great idea. And
target
actually,
yeah.
we just, because sawfish saws are an illegal item, right? So people aren't allowed to be in possession of those saws. And so the saws that we have all have a tag on them, and every single tag is listed on our permit. And so the locations that have these display cases now, they have to annually report back to us whether they still have the case or the saw's in good condition, and how many people have gone through the venue. And so they've just reported back to us, and I've realized like it's such a good project, right? There's so many people who get exposed to these saws and the display cases. There's so many people who have heard of Sharks and Rays Australia because of that, and who then report citizen science sightings back to us. But also those locations, these guys, they love it. They're really proud of it, and they're also a network now of people who report sightings back to us. So it's an absolute win-win. And so we were thinking we wanted to do something where we can, showcase those locations on our social media, because I think it's really cool, and they're really iconic roadhouses, and they're institutions on the Cape. So we should add some kind of a trip to it where people can win a T-shirt or something better at the end of it.
Well, they pay for the pub crawl, and that can go towards funding towards your program. That'd be great.
People
literally like an annual thing.
They could sign up for it, like you rent a van or something, and they sign up for it and they pay a fee, and you have somebody drives them around to the whole pubs all night, and every time they go there, they get a card ticked off, and you work out something. The establishment maybe makes a donation, and of course they get the business from the people there, and at the end of the night they can stop off at Alcoholics Anonymous to detox or whatever.
That's going to be my next holiday.
Yeah,
I'm the bus driver.
But how long has this citizen science project been going on?
Well, 2015 was for me where I've had this idea where I got that first
Right.
video, and 2016, 2017, somewhere along that way is when we
Okay.
Built that
almost
part
10
of the
years.
homepage.
Yeah.
And then 2019, we did a press release around it, and that press release went absolutely nationwide. So that was really cool, and that really kicked it off. And since then, it's been running. Like, we can see in the data that there is peaks in submissions whenever one of us goes into the media. But it's, people now know to report their sawfish sightings, and it's
So
a
you
really good
so the
thing.
program worked as in you've seen increase in sawfish sightings as well as turning in some of the saws.
Yeah, and so it gives us a really good idea now of hotspots around the country, actually.
Yeah.
And so this is something that we now want to fine tune a little bit more, because, does a sawfish hotspot tell us that there's a lot of sawfish, or there's a lot of people out there fishing
Right.
and accidentally catching them? So we're really trying to get a hand on that, like a grasp on that.
Leaning towards more questions. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think our
Yeah.
projects are they're always evolving with conservation and outreach and sawfish biology in mind.
Right.
Which is, it's also a really fun space to work in.
It's pretty cool. Now, this is all part of, and we haven't really mentioned it here, but it's Sharks and Rays Australia. So, Sarah, this is the organization that you helped form. Can you tell us, why this started, and then just tell us the evolution of that?
Yeah, so there was a huge personal component to it. So I was living in Cairns. I'd finished my PhD. My PhD supervisor, Sean Collin, he moved to UWA, so he was in Perth, and I was really like, I wanted to stay in Cairns. I would have loved to keep working with him, but I really wanted to stay in Cairns. And there's a small branch of James Cook University up here, which is getting bigger, but most of the marine stuff is down in Townsville. And for me, it was always like, I don't want to leave Cairns. Cairns is a spectacular place. Like, a friend of mine once said to me, we've got 300 waterfalls within a day trip distance. So it's really fun here. It's really beautiful. And so there was this component where I was like, well, if I have to leave Cairns, I think I have to give it a really good try and really try to stay here first. And the second thing was that I had realized that, with sawfish, I wanted to keep working with these animals. I find them still fascinating. And that there is this community part of the work that is really required, like school visits and community engagement and working with traditional owners, working with land and sea rangers and stuff like that. And so I really wanted to do that. And so I wanted to go independent, and I wanted to see if it works. And so I spent part of a year traveling around, visiting different places, going white shark diving in South Africa and in Guadeloupe, and visiting the program of the University of Miami on how they take high school students shark tagging and stuff like that. And I really wanted to see what these programs do and how they work, and what I like about them, what I don't like about them, and then trying to figure out if we could do something like that. And so I did that, and then founded Sharks and Rays Australia, and ran into heaps of trouble along the way. It took us 9 months to get our little vessel into registration, like, to just give you one thing. But there was a lot of things where it's like, nobody's ever done this before. My insurance broker immediately, I needed to get insurance, and he was like, you want to work with sharks, and what, stingrays? Like, the animals that killed Steve Irwin?
Right. Yeah.
So, okay, we need more community outreach about stingrays. So, and then I had to learn a lot. How to run these field trips in remote areas, how to set up these collaborations, how to keep these collaborations going. And so for me, it was a huge personal path as well. And I think now we're a non-for-profit. So I started initially as a company, because non-for-profits have large requirements in Australia. You need a minimum of 3 directors. You need, for a research organization, you need a research board. You have these structures in place that are just, they're not easy to set up. And I wanted to have the right people in there.
Right.
And so now, I think in 2021, we founded the non-for-profit organization, and since then it's just been going, like before it's been going fantastic, but now I think it's going really well.
So is that what this LTD was when you got that, or?
So the Sharks and Rays Australia is a company, but then the Sharks and Rays Australia Research is the non-for-profit.
Mm.
They work together. The organizations, but having the non-for-profit now and growing that, yeah. So we gotta.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yep.
Good.
We've got our board of directors now has quite a diverse group of people in there, and our research board has most Sawfish researchers in Australia and some international as well, like Nicole Phillips and Pete Kine is now international.
Yep.
Nice.
So it's a really good team, and
So when you're starting it as a company, and then you move toward, and then eventually moving towards a nonprofit, both are very different in the way you manage with those. And you're starting this independently. It's very difficult to be able to survive, without income to be able to do that. A lot of times when you're associated with a university, you get funding from the university or grants and so forth. Can we talk a little bit about like how the challenges of starting, your own independent company and then moving it to a nonprofit, and where where your funding came from and your ability to sort of pay your bills and stuff?
So this is a big shout out to the Save Our Seas Foundation, because they gave me, I had a small grant and a Keystone grant when I started Sharks and Rays Australia. And things like, as I said, the boat took 9 months to get into registration, and so this grant was just delayed, and they stuck with me, and I'm really thankful for that, because that having them going, yeah, I think you can do it, just meant a lot. But so when I started Sharks and Rays Australia, I realized in those remote areas, and doing that research, we need two things. We need more, but these are the two main things. We need money to fund the research, and we also need people power. We need people who can help with the research, and I think that's where that Bimini model comes in, where students come out and they learn how to do this work, so they benefit in that regards. But at the same time, they're the ones who are keeping these research projects alive and keep them alive over a long time, which then also allows you to function maybe outside of academic funding cycles. So you can do our SAWS paper is based on 7 years of donations of SAWS. The citizen science paper that my student is working on is based on 10 years of citizen science. So it's these are really important studies because they show a lot of things over longer time frames, I think.
Right.
And that's also a freedom to be able to do that.
For sure. How much of your time is dedicated towards doing the actual research and working on the actual projects, and then also the admin side of trying to apply for grants, running the actual company, like running the nonprofit?
So I was doing most of the admin myself within the company, because it was basically me plus interns and students.
Right.
Or interns and volunteers. Yeah, Nikki came on board in 2019 as an intern and then became a student.
Okay.
And so then she helped me with admin, with permits and things like that. But yeah, running an organization, there's a lot more to it than permits, but permits are huge.
Yeah. They take a long time too, right? It's a lot of paperwork and
So I was doing the majority. I now have somebody employed part-time who is really good and helps me with the research admin side of it as well. But for me, I always want to do more research. Obviously, that's what I really want to do.
That's why you started it, right?
Yeah. But then now there is that large people component, working with those ranger groups, setting up the field trips, getting volunteers and interns on board, screening people, who can join us in the field, stuff like that.
Right.
So that's a big component.
That takes time as well. Yeah. It takes
Well, Well, Barb, this has been super fascinating. I guess question to we'll have to have you back pursue this some more, but kind of where do you kind of see your organization going over the next 10, 20 years or so?
Oh, 10, 20 years is a long time.
Well, you're a kid, so like.
I was a kid when I watched MacGyver.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
I see it growing, and I think we're taking a really good direction. So I'm in a really happy place now with my team, with our directors and everybody, and we're growing in a direction that I hadn't really anticipated as well, right? So for me, there's a lot of things that just, we're forming a path, and we have this freedom to go along that path, which I think is really beautiful. So, realizing citizen science is really important for these animals. So, we got on that path. And so one of the things that we're trying to do now is we're trying to turn our training for land and sea rangers, for Aboriginal people who are custodians of the land that they're connected to. We're trying to turn our Sawfish training into a nationally accredited course.
Oh, nice.
Which I think is a really, really cool thing. And there's so many things that can come out of that. I think that's the biggest thing for me at the moment, but then also growing all the projects and continuing them, and hopefully seeing more Sawfish.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah. What? Yeah. One of the final question here is that what advice would you have for someone, a younger person, let's say, starting out?
So I often get asked this question by students or interns who come through, and the one thing that I always say to them is think backwards. So try and figure out what are the things that you want to do later on. So do you want to be in a lab? Do you want to work in an extremely remote area, or do you want to do research that is close to your house, right? So what are the settings of how you want to spend your life? Do you want to travel a lot? Because travel can become tedious if you have to do it all the time. So think about those settings, and then figure out how you get to that. And because for me, my path wasn't direct. So getting from sensory biology to running a non-for-profit organization, that's not a straight path. And so I think there might be ways of getting earlier on to where you want to be and figuring that out faster maybe, or having a straighter line of where you want to get to. And I think that's my advice. So
love it.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, we'll definitely have you back. 'Cause if nothing else, we're going to want to hear how the pub crawl fundraiser goes. You can tell us how.
I'll tag you guys in every post.
Share with us.
One day we'll just have to go down to Australia
absolutely.
and do a podcast from the pub crawl, I think is what we'll have to do.
That's it. You'll have to find every display case.
Yep. There you
There's
go. That'd be
65 of them.
perfect. Oh, perfect! Just perfect for us, Andrew. I think we'll have to pencil that one in.
We'll have to do that. Yeah.
But anyway, Barbara, thank you very much. This has been an outstanding discussion with you, and hopefully the beer pub and everything else will take off, and we'll look forward to having you back on again. Okay.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been fun.
Thank you, Barbara. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Barbara, for joining us on today's episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. Dave, it's really interesting when we hear from someone who starts their own organization from scratch, and the challenges that they face, the reason why they're doing it. It's always interesting because it's always unique for everybody. What did you think of Barbara's story in terms of why she started it, and then how she's continuing to do it? Yeah,
I think it was fascinating. I think one thing is, unlike a lot of people, like when they're young people, they know they're going to go do sharks. She kind of came to a little later in the game, where she really got into interest in the marine science and into sharks and coral reefs initially, and then got into sharks and rays. And so it was a fascinating story, how she got into it a little later, but she was very well traveled. Fortunately, and she had a lot of experience, and she had some experience being in Australia, as well as being at the Bimini Marine Lab with Sonny Gruber and a few other places. which I think probably helped lay the groundwork for her. And then she's talked about, working in these remote areas and stuff. You really have to be MacGyver. And as we say, of course, the three of us aged ourselves quite a bit on that one. And the young people here, go check out the TV series MacGyver from the 80s.
Yeah.
And 90s,
make anything from a toothpick and gum. Like he can make anything.
Yeah, and like I said, it was kind of interesting when you talk about all the gear and stuff, and that they have to get out there and make sure it's working. And she talked about having like fixed cars in the middle of nowhere, and those are all people often ask me like what should they learn in terms of like to get ready for grad school. And I said, well, in Barbara's case, knowing how to fix a wheel axle might be a good thing, or change a tire would be really helpful.
Yeah.
For her and in her field work. So I think that she's a real can do. You have to be a real can do person like that when you're out there, because she's not just doing the research, but we didn't really talk about how all the fundraising she had to do, and she made our friends with the Save Our Seas Foundation, who were kind of instrumental in getting us going. And they've been very generous in supporting my research. They were really there for Barbara, and I think you hear that a lot, just about how important the Save Our Seas Foundation has been for a lot of us to really kind of get our projects going. And so just shout out to them.
Absolutely.
But you got to be in there fundraise. You got to be a fundraiser. You got to be a mechanic. You got to be an administrator, and then a field biologist. And it's a lot. It's a lot to do.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure is.
But what I love too, how she's doing. We hear a lot about organizations that take on interns or that take on volunteers to do the research. There's a lot of bad connotations with some of them. Some of these organizations, and we often forget about the model that Barbara talked about in terms of Bimini, right? The model of how many shark scientists came out of Bimini to be such great shark scientists. A lot of them that we've actually had on the show, and I think she's doing the same. We told this after we recorded. I told her the same thing. I said, you are essentially creating a very similar path where people have the chance to come to a remote area, learn those skill sets, but also be around other shark scientists and learn about sharks and rays in Australia, sawfish, a number of different rays, and be able to study things that people haven't studied and be able to launch their career. So there's also that aspect of mentorship, right? And doing an internship and learning all these things and being able to come out of that with opportunities, not only to work with somebody like Barbara who has connections within the science field, but also to work together and create their own network and help each other out as they go through, so each cohort can go through. And she may not. I remember she's saying she didn't have as many interns coming through as Bimini did, but she has quite a few, and those cohorts can even become closer, and they can go out and they can do some great things. And I'm looking forward to hearing about that over the next 10 years to say, oh yeah, you came from Sarah, in Australia and worked under Barbara, just like everybody's saying that they worked under Sonny Gruber and they offered such a great thing. And I think that tells a lot, about some of these organizations that are doing this, that, when there's proper mentorship and internship and volunteership done, that you can really create something special.
Yeah. No, it was good. It was very good. And I also like the story she shared about having met Eugenie Clark when she was first starting out.
Oh yeah.
At one of her first conference. I could totally relate to that.
Talk about
having
mentorship.
Met her when I was a graduate student, and then having had several of my grad students meet her in similar circumstances where they'd be presenting a poster or something, and Jeannie would come up and start talking to them, and they didn't realize like who it was at first, and they realized, oh my gosh, this is Jeannie Clark. And but it's just very unassuming, and just really speaks a lot to the kind of person she was. Stuff, and so
those things matter. Those little interactions matter, right? I think even the people who are hearing this, who are mid-career or even late career shark scientists, the interactions you have with young scientists, with students, matter. And to just show interest and show interest on the studies and to provide that support really helps, not only create a tighter network of shark scientists, but also just a way of support and feeling accepted within the industry. It's not an easy field to be in, and to be able to provide that support of just through little interactions like, being interested in a poster, and really congratulating the student on that poster and the research that they've done and accomplished I think is a really great thing. So yeah, there's lots of goodies out of this interview, and we really appreciate it. We're gonna put the links to the website for Sarah as well as the social media sites, and you'll get that in the show notes, and so you can take a look at there. But Dave, if people want to get a hold of you, how would they do so?
It's on Instagram. It's Lost Shark Guy, and same on Facebook and X and LinkedIn. And but I also want to mention a new YouTube channel, Lost Shark Guy, with our episodes. We just had our first couple episodes come out, Searching for Lost Sharks, Extinct or Alive, which was funded by the Save Our Seas Foundation. Yes. I want to give a shout out and thank to them. So please check that out, and please consider subscribing, and also check out the Beyond Jaws podcast YouTube channel as well. So there you get your shark fix. Get your shark fix for the week.
Yeah, and just an aside to that, or in addition to that, you mentioned Save Our Seas. Barbara's organization started off with Save Our Seas. Not surprising, right? Save Our Seas looks at this kind of stuff and says, yeah, we think we can do it, even though there's delays in boats coming, as Barbara said. And she's like, yeah, no, Save Our Seas is like, yeah, you know what? We still believe in you. We think what you're doing is great. And now she's able to accomplish some great things. So again, Save Our Seas is coming in to literally save our seas. And I think that's really helped. And they should almost say it to save awesome projects, because that's what they do as well, as we continue to do. So thank you to them. But yes, that's it for today's episode. We want to thank you for listening, and thank you, Barbara, for joining us on today's episode. And Dave, it's always fun to do podcasting with you. We really appreciate it. Looking forward to doing some more. And until next time, thank you so much for joining us on the Beyond Jaws podcast. From Dave and I, we want to thank you. Have a great day, and happy conservation.